Joining me now is Alex Newman of libertysentinel.org. We also carry his broadcast here on Worldview Tube. And oh, by the way, he'll be the keynote speaker, one of the keynote speakers at our national conference coming up Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. Full details at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. And if you want to live stream it and miss out on half the blessing, which is being there with other people and talking to the speakers in person, then you can pick up 50% of what the conference has to offer by streaming it online. And you can join at the Vault level, 1-year membership to live stream it, worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. He joins us now to discuss a lot of issues. He joins us by phone. Alex, thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
Great to be here. Thank you very much for having me, Brannon.
Let's go into a couple issues that are very important and near and dear to our heart. Number one is the attack on families, the attack on homeschoolers, religious liberty. We've been talking a lot about the bill in California that's passed the House, headed to the Senate. Jack Hibbs had a big rally yesterday. We had him on last night. I want to go to Illinois, where they're also going after families. But first, your thoughts on the bill in California, because that doesn't affect just California. If anybody's kid or grandkid is taken and can get to California, it sounds like the state government is going to do everything in their power to help change the child's last name and hide that child from any of their family members seeking to find them that's been kidnapped or sex trafficked. I mean, I can hardly believe I'm even saying this, but this is what the attorneys are telling us. And not just one, multiple attorneys are saying this is what's in the bill.
Yeah, it is so outrageous, Brandon. You're right. It's hard to imagine that we're even having this discussion. As far as I'm concerned, California is trying to make itself complicit in kidnapping, child sex trafficking, child genital mutilation. I mean, these people are totally out of control. And as you know, Brandon, I'm not usually a big fan of having the federal government step in and take the reins on almost anything. But when you have a situation like this, the U.S. Constitution, when the states joined, they agreed to give up certain powers. They agreed that they were going to have a Republican form of government. They agreed that they were going to protect the God-given rights of the people in their state. And these people are completely out of control now. As far as I'm concerned, these people are trying to perpetrate a massive crime against the parents, not just of California, but of other states. And I think it's time for the Department of Justice to start looking at criminal charges. This is just unconscionable, and we need to stop pretending like this is just a difference in political opinions. We're talking here about people proposing to commit serious criminal acts under color of law, which is a felony. Right? Depriving somebody of their constitutionally protected rights under color of law is a felony, punishable with very, very serious prison sentences, and in some cases, even harsher. So I do think we need the DOJ to start looking at this issue here, because these people are out of control, and if they are not stopped, we'll see the same madness in Illinois and New York and New Jersey and a whole bunch of other left-wing Democrat states.
Absolutely. There's something going on in Illinois. Again, people are going to duplicate this, I promise you. Before I tell you what's happening in Illinois, my second book in 1993, Cradle to College, An Educational Abduction. I talked about a program that came out of Missouri called Parents as Teachers. It should have really been called Teachers as Parents. And what they would do is they would go into the homes to do home visits. And a lot of people would maybe volunteer that are lower income and wanting to get some kind of assistance. Other people were being encouraged to just do it, maybe from the hospital. Hey, we can have someone come by and help you and encourage you and just check out if there's any way we can help you with your situation as a new mom. And people, not knowing, okay, sure, fine, whatever. And so they had these home visits. And there was criteria that was set for determining whether a child was so-called at risk. And as I detail in that book in 1993, every child would be at risk. Too many toys, too few toys, lack of stimulation, overstimulation, a parent who travels frequently, a death in the family, moving to a new home, loss of a job. I mean, everybody could have been allergies. Everybody could be classified as at risk. And then the more at-risk kids you had in a county, the more state money you got. The more at-risk kids you had in a state, the more federal money you got. And now we were warning then, don't be shocked when the government forces home visits and finds every family is at risk and needs a social worker to oversee that family. And we know that because of the Washington Star back in the 1960s, and the forerunner to the Department of Education, educational welfare, had a program where they were openly stating they wanted to computerize and open a file to every child in the country and write a prescription for the family when there was a problem. Well, this doesn't shock me what you're writing about. Here it is. Alex is writing about it at the libertysentinel.org. Illinois mandates, quote, mental health, end quote, testing of all children. Tell me about this, and how does it look compared to what I just described from my 1993 book, Alex?
Well, thank you, Brannon. So what just happened in Illinois, the far-left Governor J.B. Pritzker, one of the leading transgender advocates, him and his family in the world, he just signed into law a bill that is going to require a mandatory mental health screening of every child in the government indoctrination camp, starting in 3rd grade all the way through 12th grade. Every year, they're going to do these screenings. They're going to be asked incredibly sensitive questions about how they feel, what they're thinking about, how their home life is, their relationships, their sexual activity. And then these government bureaucrats will, of course, put that all into the file on each child. It'll be processed through the AI, and then these children could be referred for further, quote-unquote, treatment. They can be drugged. Obviously, Big Pharma stands to benefit in a huge way. They fund about 90% of the state legislators in Illinois. Their campaign contributions are coming from big pharmaceuticals. This is one of the most intrusive assaults on the rights of parents and the rights of children, even privacy, basic privacy about what's going on in your mind, that we've ever seen in American history. But to your point, Brannon, this is actually a global agenda. The UN has an agreement called the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. The U.S. government is one of only 2 governments in the world that have not ratified it yet. But when it was implemented in Scotland, they actually cited this in their legislation, saying that every child born in Scotland is going to have a named government minder who is going to oversee their development and their upbringing from the time they're years old until adulthood, and that's where they're going worldwide. More and more, we're watching parents being replaced, and one of the things that this UN convention calls for is says that every decision for the child must be made in the best interests of the child, which sounds really nice until you realize that the best interest of the child will be determined not by the parent, but by the government. So we're talking here about the total elimination of the rights and the authorities and the responsibilities of parents, and the usurpation of those rights and authorities and responsibilities by an out-of-control government that literally kills babies and mutilates children.
Do you think we're going to get a favorable ruling from the Supreme Court on parental rights soon in any cases?
Well, there's a friend of mine who actually, her case is being considered by the Supreme Court right now. Her name is Erin Lee. I first met her a few years ago. Her cousin is a good friend of ours, and they transgenderized her 12-year-old daughter. They told her to stay for an after-school art club. Turns out it was a Genders and Sexualities Alliance club, and they convinced this little 12-year-old girl that she must have been born in the wrong body, that she was transgender, that her parents were not a safe space, so she couldn't talk about it to them. And when the parents found out and pulled the daughter out of school, they talked about sending CPS in. They did a wellness check to make sure that, because the parents weren't being affirming, the presumption was that they are abusive. And her case is now being considered by the U.S. Supreme Court for consideration. So I think the Supreme Court is going to take up one of these cases very soon. But unfortunately, even though we supposedly have a conservative majority, I would argue that we don't. We have a statist majority that occasionally does the right thing like a broken clock, but more often than not, if we're not paying close attention, they will legitimize and even authorize a lot of these assaults on our basic rights. So I'm not going to put my hope and trust in the Supreme Court. I do think they're going to take a case on this soon, but I'm afraid it's not going to go the way that we hope it will.
Mm. In that book in 1993, Reclaiming a Nation at Risk, that I wrote, I quoted then Secretary of Education for President George H. Bush, Lamar Alexander, who was for years the U.S. Senator from our state of Tennessee. He was the governor. He gave up his governorship to become the Secretary of Education for George H. Bush, which George H. Bush unveiled in the Rose Garden, America 2000, which became, of course, Goals 2000 under Bill Clinton, and then No Child Left Behind under George W., Race to the Top, Common Core under Obama. It all comes from the UN, as you stated. And Lamar Alexander openly bragged that they were going to create federally funded one-stop centers where the government would train you for the job if you lose your job, but they would even have babies in these centers, and that they would be open from early in the morning till late at night. And basically your whole life would revolve around the government social center. That was in my book in 93. That was a Republican, so-called, Lamar Alexander. Here's another headline at Liberty Sentinel. Chicago expands parental replacement centers disguised as schools. Sounds very familiar again, doesn't it, to my book in 93, what you're reporting at libertysentinel.org, Alex?
It sure does, Brannon. And Lamar Alexander was actually the chief sponsor in the Senate in 2015 of a bill called the Every Student Succeeds Act, which was the bill that opened up the floodgates of federal funding for exactly these institutions. They call them full-service community schools. In Chicago, they're calling them sustainable community schools, but it's the same model. They are parental replacement centers. I mean, that's my term, but that's what they are. It used to be that the schools would handle, quote unquote, the academics, and then parents would do everything else. Well, these full-service community schools that Lamar Alexander pushed through the U.S. Senate back in 2015, Obama called it a Christmas miracle. They are going to be in charge of your child's mental health, dental health, nutrition. They're going to feed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If you're lucky and you behave yourself, you might still be allowed to do the bedtime stories and the goodnight hugs. But other than that, I mean, you are being pushed out of the picture entirely by these so-called community schools. And Lamar Alexander has been right at the center of it for decades.
Well, there you go. He didn't give up on that. All right. Let's talk about some big climate change conference coming up. You're going to, is that right?
Well, God willing, yeah, we have put in our application. I've gone to almost every UN climate summit for the last 15 years. They really don't like us, but we do plan to go. It's going to be in November in Brazil. It's the biggest climate summit ever. They're expecting over 100,000 people chopping down huge parts of the rainforest to make it all happen. And I understand from sources within the Trump administration they're not planning on participating in a big way, which is encouraging. But what these people do every year under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is the underlying treaty ratified in 1992, they come together, usually in a nice resort town. This year it'll be in Belém in Brazil. And they come up with a new and improved climate agreement. And they say, oh, you don't need to have your Senate ratify that. It's just an addition to the previously ratified treaty, the 1992 UNFCCC. So they're planning big things. Last year, they announced the first ever international regulations for global carbon markets. The year before that, they set up the loss and damage system to transfer wealth looted from the American middle class to third world dictators. The year before that, Joe Biden and John Kerry pled guilty on behalf of Americans for our alleged role in causing the climate crisis. And this comes, Brannon, by the way, in the context of one of the most important court cases in the history of the world, is how the UN is framing it. Just a couple weeks ago, the International Court of Justice ruled that all governments have an obligation under international law to combat the climate crisis by limiting, reining in carbon dioxide emissions. Carbon dioxide, as a reminder for folks, is the gas you exhale. And they said any government that doesn't do an adequate job of this is committing what they described as an internationally wrongful act. So under this ruling, they're laying the groundwork for punishing people in the future who don't fight the quote-unquote climate crisis with enough vigor. And I encourage people to look at this. There was almost nothing about it in the American media, certainly no in-depth reporting, no 24-hour news coverage about it. But this is one of the most consequential cases in the history of humanity. And they themselves are saying it is going to shape policy on energy, transportation, farming, the environment, agriculture, everything you can think of all over the world. And so that's the backdrop in which this UN COP30, the 30th Conference of the Parties, is taking place. And now all these dictators, all these governments will be able to say, look, we have to do this. Otherwise, we're committing an internationally wrongful act, a human rights violation. We're violating people's right to a good climate. So it's hard to overstate the enormity of this attack on freedom and sovereignty, Brannon.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Of course, then you can figure out where social credit scores, Palantir, getting a file on every American, you can understand where that starts coming in then, right?
Exactly right. And your carbon footprint is going to be a major component of your social credit score. They're already saying this. For people who listen to like the World Economic Forum's meetings, they're telling you that your carbon footprint is going to play a huge role in what you're able to do in the future. And they're bragging that through digital currency, they're able to create an individual carbon footprint tracker. And once you've exceeded your allotted carbon budget, you're done. No more travel, no more steak, no more fuel, no more nothing. So this is, again, an enormous attack on prosperity, on the middle class, on the sovereignty of nations, on self-government, and, of course, on our individual liberties.
And, of course, here comes 15-minute cities then. It fits right into that, right?
Absolutely. And again, if you don't go along with all this, you're committing an internationally wrongful act because you're contributing to the human right violation of people not having a nice climate. So, I realize that people listening think that sounds like the most ridiculous thing I ever heard, because it is ridiculous. But this is what they are doing. And I encourage people to look it up and urge your member of Congress to push back. Trump's doing pretty much everything he can with his executive authority to push back on this agenda. But if we don't get this stuff enshrined into law, what they are going to do is exactly what they did. One, everything Trump has done will be reversed, and we'll be right back where we started with this climate hoax.
Tell me things that you're happy about, things that you're concerned about in the first 6 months here of the Trump administration, or 7 months.
Well, on the climate front, I could not have written a better playbook for dismantling the climate fraud. Starting on day one, he started with the executive orders, reversing everything that he could from Joe Biden. He now has reversed, or he started the process of reversing the endangerment finding that found that carbon dioxide is pollution and therefore must be regulated under the Clean Air Act. Very, very encouraging, very, very good work. Now what I hope he will do is go for the UNFCCC. We've got to get out of that treaty. We never should have ratified it in the first place, and it's not constitutional, so it's illegitimate. So on the climate front, Trump is doing great things. On the spending, I'm very concerned. He's got the veto pen, and he's got the bully pulpit. He needs to be telling these members of Congress to cut it out. I understand that he is looking carefully at international or the reforming or even abolishing of the reserve system and maybe the repealing of the Federal Reserve Act. I hope he will move in that direction. That's what we need. So I've been very pleased with some of the international negotiations he's done, very pleased with his efforts to rein in the globalism. He got us out of UNESCO, the UN Education Agency. He's getting us out of the World Health Organization. He's doing a lot. He actually officially rejected the 2030 agenda and told the UN to their face that we're not going to be playing along with this fraud anymore. So all that is very, very good. I would like to see him work with Congress to get some of these things enshrined into federal law. And I wish he would stop going after members of Congress who are calling out the overspending and the constitutional violations and things like this one big, beautiful bill. But, it's a mixed bag. We don't put our trust in princes or politicians. We put our trust in the Lord. But I think certainly Donald Trump is doing a lot of very, very good things. I am a little bit concerned, too, about the agenda for federal school choice. I think Trump means well, but we know that the next time we have a deep state Democrat puppet in the White House, they're going to use all of that architecture to try to seize control of our private schools and our home schools.
Mm-hmm. How concerned are you about all the data centers that are being built and their pull on the power grids? Patrick Wood says they're going to be building an alternative power center that is just for the data centers. We're all going to be left with this third world antiquated power grid that needs to be drastically updated and massively protected from EMP and other things. And they're going to leave us with this junk power grid, and they're going to build their own. They're going to have their own nuclear power and their own lines running. But in the meantime, they have to run off ours, and our bills are going to skyrocket. And Patrick says it's not a matter of if, but when the power grid, one or all three, go down due to these power data centers sucking too much power till they get their own. How concerned are you, Alex?
Extremely. And not just because of the taxing of our energy grid and the massive power bills. I mean, some places they're seeing now $1,000 a month power bills up in the Northeast. I mean, it is absolutely crazy. These very same globalists, after decades of telling us we couldn't build power plants, we had to shut down our coal-fired power plants, couldn't build nuclear power plants. Now they're telling us, but we need all your power, and you don't have much left thanks to the windmills and the solar panels. So that's a disgrace. But even more concerning for me is the fact that they're using all these data centers and these AI systems to enslave us. And I don't think that's Donald Trump's intention, but I think he's getting some very bad advice from people like Peter Thiel, from some of the tech bros out in Silicon Valley. They're now just trying to use him to advance their technocratic agenda that Pat Wood, of course, describes so well.
Are you, we're hearing, that the Attorney General of Missouri, Bailey, is going to be going in as a deputy FBI director. You think we're about to see a shakeup at the FBI?
I hope so. I mean, the FBI has been a pretty major disappointment. I had Kash Patel on my show for half an hour shortly before he became the FBI director. And from hearing him talk, you'd think that, the country was saved, right? He's talking about going after the real criminals, the deep staters, the Russia collusion hoaxers, the traitors, the Epstein-related things. And what we've seen is worse than a disgrace. I mean, just last week, they gave an award to the FBI agent that was involved in murdering Lavoy Finicum. So we've got a real problem at the FBI, and I don't know exactly what's going through Kash Patel's mind. I'm not sure what's up with Dan Bongino, but I'll say I've been less than impressed, and I think we really do need a major shakeup. And if these guys can't handle it, if they're not doing the investigations and getting criminal charges ready with the DOJ, then it's time to step aside and let somebody else take those roles.
What about Pam Bondi?
I've never been a huge Pam Bondi fan. She was our attorney general in Florida, and the thing that she was best known for in our circles was helping to frame Zimmerman in the Trayvon Martin case. Even though there was not enough evidence to go after him, they had to basically create the case from fraudulent stuff. So I'm not a big Pam Bondi fan. I hope she will do the right thing. I know she's done some good stuff, and I mentioned my friend Erin Lee earlier. She actually represented Erin in her court battles over this issue with her 12-year-old daughter that was transgenderized by the government school. So I'm hoping we'll see more, but we've got a long way to go before we can have confidence in the DOJ again.
Okay, one more before we let you go, Alex. What are your thoughts in regards to the division that's been created in MAGA? I read some people that are out there almost daily defending Putin. Look, I just call them the way I see them, right? I think this war was set up. Yes, Putin invaded. I would say, yes, he started it. But we certainly, as Peter Price said at this desk before he passed away and warned, we should have given him the guarantees. We're not going to let Ukraine come into NATO. We're not going to drag weapons up to his border. And yet we've done everything we can, it seems, to escalate. I think our CIA has been over there involved, helping with technology and the data that's needed to strike deep inside Russia. I think the European leaders want World War III to cover up a financial problem they've got. I'm not convinced any peace deal they get will hold. I pray it does, but I'm not so sure. When I see something that Putin's doing that is not right, I say it. When I see sides where there seem to be poking a stick in his eye and he's maybe even being restrained in some cases, I see it. But I say it. But what I guess I'm trying to get to is I want to present the facts as they are, right? But I see more and more people in the MAGA world really defending Putin. And I don't think you can defend Zelensky. And I don't think there's a lot to defend Putin on other than a few times here and there. I think we got to mess with both these guys. And I think at the end of the day, the globalists want to break up Russia. I think they like to get their minerals. So I think also Putin and China would like to go with a new world order that has them more in control. So I think people that start running around defending Putin, making him out to be the victim all the time, in a few years might be shocked, if he continues living, because I think he's trying with China to rebound, and he's making a greater alliance with North Korea now. What are your thoughts? Is there are so many people now just so aggressively defending Putin?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about Putin. I've argued for a long time. I did a major investigation in 2014 for the New American Magazine where we showed the real Putin. I mean, the guy is fulfilling his role in the globalist script to a T. Building up the Eurasian Union. He's terrorizing the Europeans so that they'll give up more sovereignty and create a military union and all the rest of it. And, of course, he is still an unrepentant and largely unreformed communist, even though he's not a part of the Communist Party officially anymore. So I think Putin is a very dangerous guy. We're actually reprinting a 2007 article by my colleague William F. Jasper in our next edition of the New American, because we were warning about this 20 years ago. I think Putin and the Communist Chinese are getting ready to do what Anatoly Golitsyn described back in the 1980s. They're getting ready for a second October revolution where they try to bring the entire world under the control of a totalitarian global system. And the worst part of this, and I don't think Anatoly Golitsyn saw this, is that his biggest, their biggest boosters, aiders, and defenders and abettors are in the Western world, the globalists, the mega banks, et cetera. So I think they did this by design. And I think we are in a very, very dangerous situation. And now, certainly, that should not be interpreted as a defense of Zelensky. But I think the globalists want a third world war. And I think if they can get it with Russia or Ukraine, if they can get it with the Koreas, if they can get it with India, Pakistan, I don't think they care that much. But they know that a third world war would be excellent for the purpose of speeding up this process of globalism that they're so desperate to impose on humanity before enough people wake up.
I know I said one more, but I just got to add this into that, and that is, if they can't divide MAGA over Zelensky and Putin, then maybe they can divide MAGA over Israel. So there's another division point, and that's, I think, again, one of my concerns that the coalition is being divided.
Yeah, and that's by design, of course, Brandon. You and I both know that. Divide and conquer, very old strategy. They know that if patriotic Americans unite on the 80 to 90% of stuff that we agree on, we would be a powerful force to reckon with. But if they can divide us, they'll do what they always do and take back over. So it's very, very alarming to see this.
Check it out right here, folks. LibertySentinel.org, LibertySentinel.org. And what is it you're going to be speaking on Friday night at our national conference, October 3rd, Alex?
Well, I think globalism, the fourth industrial revolution, and where all of this is going in terms of the globalization of the digital currency architecture and the transhumanist agenda, and try to wrap it all up into one package so that people can see at least the outlines of the big picture. So.
Absolutely. Well, you got to be here, folks. That's all there at worldviewstore.com. In the meantime, his website's libertysentinel.org, and we carry his broadcast here on Worldview Tube on the weekends. Alex, safe travels. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it, Brandon.
Alex Newman checking in, and check out his site, libertysentinel.org. Also a keynote speaker Friday night, October 3rd, in the building. You can live stream it with a year membership, but you're not going to be able to walk up and talk to him. But if you are there in person, you will, along with Gordon Chang and all the rest of them. So there's a lot of benefits to being here in person. Hope you'll join us October 3rd, October 4th in beautiful Collierville, Tennessee. Worldviewstore.com. We'll be right back after this break.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.